Hey, animal science classes, it's Miss Chaudry here with a short lesson on the feed composition guide. So one of your documents that you're going to be working with over the next however many days I guess you decide to take is this feed composition guide. Essentially what this document does is looks at a number of different feedstuffs that we might use to create a meal for an animal, a meal that we call a TMR or total mixed ration. You can kind of think of all of the different feedstuffs like an ingredient in a recipe book. And you are deciding which ones are going to be the best ones to add in order to meet your animal's nutritional requirements, those things that they need based on what functions of feed you're trying to feed for. So you can see that it's broken down into different categories: roughages, things that tend to be higher in fiber, concentrates and grains, which tend to be higher in other nutrients, protein supplements, which obviously tend to be higher in protein, extremely important for animals that are being used for reproduction and or lactation. And then other supplements that help to meet other nutrient requirements, often different vitamins and minerals. That's going to be the left column, is that list of feedstuffs, or again, list of ingredients that we use to make an animal's feed. The rest of the columns are going to look at different nutrients that those animals need or different characteristics about the feedstuffs themselves. So our first column is DM. DM stands for dry matter. That's telling us how much of the feed is non-water nutrients. When you were reading your notes previously, or hopefully you read those first, one of the things that it talked about in the water section of our handout is that we can get animals water not only through just drinking water, but also through some feeds that have higher water content. So this looks at the reverse. So for example, 89% of alfalfa hay is dry matter. It doesn't have a lot of liquid in it. Our next column is called TDM, or total digestible nutrients. That looks at how much of that feed is providing like easily obtainable nutrients that animal has actual access to their digestive system being able to break down and absorb. We know that animals don't absorb everything we feed them. That's why they poop. Our next column, CP. CP stands for crude protein. So that's our overall protein value. So if we look at something like brome grass hay, that's 10% protein. That means that if I fed an animal 100 pounds of brome grass hay, 10 pounds of what I gave them would just be protein nutrient for building tissues, helping with reproduction, creating milk, etc. Our next column on this feed composition guide is calcium. Calcium is a mineral nutrient, and as you read, minerals are something that aren't needed in very large amounts. Even when you look at macro versus micro, they're both much smaller than the other nutrients like proteins and lipids and carbohydrates and water. So these are all going to generally have a decimal, and that is on purpose. They are, again, very small amounts. Our other one that we look at on this chart is phosphorus. So phosphorus is the P on the far right side. Again, also a decimal, also a very small needed mineral, micro mineral. And you can see that these are all in very small then amounts. So if you look down at, say, corn gluten meal right here, it is 0.55%, which means that if I fed 100 pounds, I would have about half a pound of that 100 pounds of corn gluten meal that would be phosphorus, which is really different than the 41 pounds that would be protein. Okay? So again, this document is something that you're going to be using to help to create what we call balanced rations, aka rations that are going to provide all of the necessary nutrients for an animal, depending on what functions of feed we're trying to feed to. Your first activity with this is going to be just looking for, reading for information. Just like when we read an article, there are things that we want to focus in on and make sure that we understand. So too, as we use the feed guide, do we want to make sure reading for key pieces of information. So your first activity is going to be a Google form where you're going to be asked for different values for certain nutrients and then expected to find that information. The form will automatically grade itself when you're done, so you'll be able to get that back in your email right away and see how you did. If you have questions, as always, please email whoever is your animal science teacher, myself or Mr. Strupp.